We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. It's our trending wide receivers for NFL Week 15. Before the chaos, after the chaos, everything in between, diving deep into the news, the narratives, how we can use all this chatter around the industry to find an edge at the most important position in fantasy football in DFS. And for talking wide receivers, of course, you guys know who's with us, Yahoo Sports, Reception Perception. There's a link to his YouTube channel in the description. Matt Harmon, how we living, man? This week is absolutely nuts. So hopefully we can get through this segment without being completely worthless.
I was gonna say, how long do you think this thing stays relevant for?
I don't know, man. That's why we're doing it live, so I can just post it.
What a
And if
night.
all this news comes out, I can just run with this, I guess. I don't know, man. It seems like a disaster. I was going to do all these like other shorts and stuff for the new channel yesterday. And then like all this stuff, I was like, I'm not going to waste my time with that. Like half the time, the people that see this, it's going to be worthless. Anyway, so we're working through it, man. This is probably our reality for like the rest of the year. So it's the way she goes. But how's everything going with you?
You know, it's going pretty well. I will say, like, maybe we get some sort of protocol change at some point. Like, that is the one kind of silver lining here, that some of these rules, for guys to get cleared in time might change. So it's a very fluid situation. That might happen by the end of the day. So who knows really how? Like, I have folks, in my Discord, the Reception Perception Discord, asking about potential tight end streamers for next week if they
Come
just
on.
lost TJ Hawkinson. I'm like, geez, man. I mean, obviously, you got to ask. We got to talk about this stuff, but my God, man, like I don't know who's going to be available to play in this week in the next like 3 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a crazy time for sure.
It's literally an hour by hour basis that we're working with right now. So let's jump right into it. Obviously, we're going to start with the impact of some of these COVID situations around the league. We just saw what happened with Tyler Lockett shortly before we went live. But I do want to start with OBJ because that was like kind of the first domino to go down earlier this week. Obviously, we could see someone like Van Jefferson see a little bit of an increased role. And then earlier today, Jalen Waddle also on the reserved COVID list, which falls probably Devonte Parker and one of the most underpriced wide receiver options on the entire slate against the Jets. So Matt, I'll let you take this any direction you would like since it's kind of a cluster right now, but it seems to be what everyone's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that let's start with the Rams situation because I think Van Jefferson is an interesting. Like, I actually kind of think him and Parker are interesting guys, regardless of the COVID thing, and of course, it certainly boosts your outlook if the two players ahead of you on the depth chart are going to
Right.
be out of the game. With Beckham, man, I mean, he was playing so well, dude. I mean, we talked about this on the show. The article is still, again, up on the website, receptionperception.com, if folks want to go check it out. Like, he was playing extremely well as an individual, isolated from his surroundings, isolated from Baker Mayfield when he was in Cleveland. And I think he still looks great. Now he obviously just looks incredible in this system with this quarterback. But man, I mean, he looks awesome. He's getting separation. I think the biggest thing, and who knows, some of this stuff is noisy anyways, like contested catch stuff, but I think he looks almost like the old Odell Beckham, at the catch point, like going up and high pointing these balls and stuff like that. So after the catch too, great speed in space. That's good to see as well, because that was kind of the one big question I had from him after looking at some of his games earlier in the season. He's been looking incredible. Him and Van Jefferson actually are the only two wide receivers since week 12 to score 3 touchdowns. Van Jefferson, I think, is an extremely good player. And now, you're kind of looking at them since the Robert Woods injury, changing Van Jefferson's role a little bit. One of the reasons I was in on him in the preseason, why he's on a ton of my redraft rosters, is that I thought he could play that X receiver position that this offense was so lacking. Obviously, then Robert Woods goes down. They've moved him into sort of like, not a pure slot role. Cooper Kupp is obviously their primary slot receiver, but he's taken more since week 12, more than 50% of his snaps from the inside. Beckham is like the pure outside wide receiver of this group. So Jefferson is a guy I think is a good play regardless, but now obviously without Beckham, just potentially, we don't know, that would just push more volume his way. I mean, I just think Jefferson is a very good player. I like this game environment for fantasy. Obviously no Tyler Lockett on the other side, maybe depresses things a bit for Seattle's offense, especially considering he's the one guy who's played extremely well, even as Russ has been slumping, and then even as Russ has started to come back up. We're still waiting for DK Metcalf. The volume is there, but not the efficiency yet. So, like this game environment for fantasy almost either way, but Van Jefferson, I think, is an extremely attractive play this week for sure.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, in terms of like, so it's still a chance that OBJ does play. Like, what does a player have to make it through in order to, I guess, get through this protocol? I guess since he was earlier in the week, that may help him, but everything I've been seeing, it's still kind of a long shot at this point that OBJ plays, right?
That would be my guess. Is it's a long shot, but I think he can still get two negative tests and potentially be out there. But again, I mean, who knows, man?
Sure.
Who really knows with this stuff? But assuming that he's out there, I still think Jefferson's a solid play, but obviously much more attractive if there is no Beckham there.
Yeah, let's talk about Devonte Parker for a second. We talked about him, I think, a couple weeks ago. Obviously, Waddle now looks like he's on the COVID reserve list as well. If he doesn't play, Parker kind of going back into that alpha role. The targets have already, I mean, he's been relatively consistent already this year in the games that he has played. So it comes down to that, but also it's the Jets, right? Originally, I was kind of thinking that maybe Tua would be a little bit sneaky. I no longer think that, and I definitely don't think that now that that Parker is so underpriced for this type of role. So target share aside, like, do you still think that Parker can go out there and be like that Parker that we remember even from like times of last year when he was priced around like 6,500, 7K? Man, it's a long way from that at this point.
Long way, yeah. I had a bold prediction before the Waddle news that Devonte Parker was going to be a top 20 receiver this week,
Nice.
and then obviously feel pretty good about that. Now at this point, last time we saw the Miami Dolphins, which was prior to their bye week, he was still third in terms of routes run on this team, behind Jalen Waddle and behind Mike Gesicki, who is a fake tight end. Of course, he's more of a wide receiver than anything else. So Parker, 5 targets in that game. But you look at the average depth of target, he's clearly the highest on the team. So, like, Parker doesn't need a ton of volume like a Jalen Waddle to get there. The other thing, though, the only thing that gives me a pause with all of this is they've so clearly changed their offense, even from what they were doing last year when Devonte Parker, was at that salary, as you mentioned. They are the most RPO heavy team in the NFL by a long shot. They're the most play action team in the NFL by a long shot. And Parker is just a very different player than Jalen Waddle. I mean, this stuff is like perfect for Jalen Waddle. Those in breakers, intermediate digs, crossing routes, slant routes. Perfect for a player like Jalen Waddle, especially the more we've seen of Waddle, the better he's looked, because I think he's just gotten healthier throughout the course of the season. It's such a good player as Jalen Waddle. Parker's not in that tier for me, but at the same time, the matchup against the Jets, the potential volume boost without Waddle, just makes you feel really good about his chances. And because that average depth of target is higher, just a couple of big plays I think are basically going to pay back that salary. He is definitely going to go down as one of the most mispriced guys on this entire slate.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Before we move on, I want to remind you guys, I kind of alluded to it before, but we do have that second YouTube channel now for the Joe Holka Show, so make sure you guys subscribe over there when you get a chance, preferably after you subscribe to Harmon's YouTube channel, though. So you'll be seeing a bunch of exclusive picks and videos over there that I'm not going to be posting anywhere else, so I don't want you guys to miss out on that. So as we kind of transition a little bit here, Harmon, a key decision point I think this week is going to revolve around what to do with the Bills wide receiver group. Like Emmanuel Sanders looking very doubtful to suit up. A lot is kind of contingent on how Josh Allen's foot sprain can kind of hinder his mobility in this week also. But I think one guy that definitely stands out regardless of this is just Gabriel Davis. We've talked about him, I feel like, a decent amount this year, but I was at the game last week and they just look to be scheming him the ball a little bit more. I'm super interested in the price tag, obviously, but curious what you think of him recently as well.
Yeah, coming off a season high, 83% of the snaps was Gabe Davis. Obviously, the Emmanuel Sanders injury has something to do with that, but I agree with you. I feel like they have, his routes run haven't really been boosting the last few weeks or anything like that. Obviously, prior to last week, with that season high snap rate, but it feels like when he's on the field, they're trying to get him the ball, and that makes sense to me because Joe, I kind of feel like this Bills offense is. Would you say they're like looking for an answer? Like they're
Yeah.
looking for a counterpunch at
hmm
this point? Like they're not just rolling out the same old, 2020 Bills offense that, and just from an efficiency perspective, like bang, they're out there, same type of unit. And I kind of think that I've said, and I feel like this sounds disrespectful to Gabe Davis. I don't mean it that way, but it's like if they had like a Gabe Davis, a guy like Gabe Davis, but was actually like a starting level consistent player. That's like exactly what this offense needs.
What they need,
You
yeah.
know, maybe Gabe Davis like takes that step, because I actually kind of think that the Bills. I wrote this in his reception perception profile, which I just tweeted out a couple of days ago. I kind of think Gabe Davis, they were smart to hedge their bets on him going into the season, signing a veteran like Emmanuel Sanders. That like, okay, if Gabe Davis, who didn't show, he showed big playability last year. If you look at his reception perception chart, 69.6% success rate on the 9 route, extremely good on other deep patterns. The curl route, the dig route, like there's something there with Gabe Davis, and he can make plays in tight coverage. Like I said, the guy can absolutely burn, but his overall success rates were pretty low among the rookies that were charted from the 2020 class. Just not. I don't think he was ready to be every down wide receiver, and it looked like the Bills agree. But like now at this point, they've been trying to like Emmanuel Sanders was their guy that was the vertical threat all year long, and it's like what are we doing with
Right.
that? Like obviously they need a deep threat. They don't even necessarily right now. It's like right now, forget about consistent every down wide receiver. They need somebody else who can burn besides Stefan Diggs on this offense, and I think it's time to fire Gabe Davis up. I think it's time for them to start getting him some more looks because, like, as I said, this passing offense needs a counterpunch, and I think Gabe Davis as a big perimeter receiver, a guy who can do that vertical stuff, can win in tight spaces. I think it's about time the Bills go towards Gabe Davis away from Emmanuel Sanders anyways. And this injury, I think, just forces their hand, which is probably, again, unfortunately for Sanders, a player I really like, but probably better for the team right now.
Yeah, I would agree. They definitely need someone to kind of step up. Obviously, we've seen Dawson Knox catch like a ton of touchdowns, but outside of that, hasn't been like a huge factor. And now his price is at a point where it's a little bit harder to get to. I think that like even what people haven't really been talking enough about probably is just Cole Beasley battling through injuries for a while as well. Like now that we're going to have potentially less mobility for Josh Allen, I could see Cole Beasley getting a little bit of a bump. We haven't really seen that ceiling performance from him in quite some time. But in theory, if he's not going to be able to run as much from his quarterback, I should say, you might get see a few more of those dump offs go Beasley's way, or if they're in the red zone, some of those plays that would normally kind of, be a threat to have Josh Allen score on the ground. Maybe we just see a few more targets in the red zone for Gabe Davis. So I'm like really interested in both of those guys as of now. I'm curious your thoughts on Stefan Diggs though. Like even like his routes run and his like target share, all that stuff has been a little bit more inconsistent this year. Is that just like a result of this offense being a little bit more inconsistent? Like, is there anything from Diggs that has you worried? Like he's basically priced up towards some of these elite options. And like even on this slate, like it's pretty hard to click Stefan Diggs at this point versus Cooper Kupp and Davonte Adams. And that was a pretty easy thing to do for a little while.
Yeah, I think that the way this offense looks right now, like you said, they're not the same unit from a consistency angle. Some of those plays where Josh Allen and Stefan Diggs were just making money on vertical patterns, those are not really present this year. I think they have been, a little off on hitting some of those big plays. And like, that's the thing too, the way this offense is constructed in Buffalo, like they need to be the 2020 Bills. Like they can't even be like the 2021 Bills haven't been that awful. I feel like we're talking like the sky is falling on this unit, and for the most part, like it's not as if they've been a disaster of a passing offense, but they needed to be like firing on all cylinders because we know they can't run the ball. Like, and that's just such a huge problem at this point. I think to like Josh Allen last week accounts for 90% of the team's offense. Like he is the entire operation there, and if like he's off just a little bit on some of these passes. I think it's fair to say he's not been as efficient, as sharp as he was in 2020. That's a lot to expect of a player, by the way, is to be as hot as he was in 2020. I feel like that just hampers the overall unit because they're so reliant on him. And like I mentioned with the Stefan Diggs thing, you look at this, you look at this offense in week one, and we think, man, they've got Diggs, they've got Sanders, they've got, Gabe Davis when they want to throw him out there, and then they've got Cole Beasley. And then Dawson Knox emerges. It's like, wow, that's like 5 options they could potentially go to.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're looking at it as, well, Dawson Knox is a good player, but he's not a volume tight end. Cole Beasley might be hurt. Sanders is hurt and hasn't been effective in months. And now they're just starting to get Dave Davis involved. that's a lot different than what we expected. And like they still, it's one thing like to try to funnel the offense through one receiver. It's a whole nother thing in practice, like where all of these guys just aren't as effective as they were last year. So long story short, no, there's nothing with Diggs that has me concerned. I just think the overall construction of the offense has led to them not being quite as efficient moving the ball consistently as they were last year.
Yeah, and then you see the yards per attempt way down for Josh Allen as well, which is hurting certain parts of the offense. But I'm with you, man. They just need like that second guy to like really step up to take things a little bit off of Diggs' shoulders. Anything else that you think has popped up throughout the week that we should be like kind of keeping an eye on? I mean, man, it seems like every time I open Twitter, it's like a major player that is out. We're just kind of trying to absorb the Tyler Lockett stuff. But man, anything else you want to chat about quickly?
I mean, I do think obviously DK Metcalf is going to be extremely popular this week now. I think he probably was a pretty good play anyways going into this week. And, with Metcalf, it's funny too, like the efficiency numbers are just so low compared to Tyler Lockett of late. I don't really know that there's any football explanation for that. When you watch Metcalf play, like it's just these thin margin for error plays not going his way, or touchdowns getting called back. I still think Metcalf's a very good player, and I could easily see him crushing this week against the Rams after a lot of folks are probably burned from playing him last week against the Houston Texans, and everything going Tyler Lockett's way. So that will be fascinating to see how that goes, because I still think Russ is not quite the Russ we expected, but has been getting better since coming back from that finger injury. But to lose his, DK Metcalf is like the alpha receiver of this unit, but we know that Tyler Lockett is so important to this passing game, and the connection there with Russ is so important. It's kind of like we're back into the wilderness with the Seahawks offense again, unfortunately, because it's not as if they have a ton of depth behind these two guys.
Back into the wilderness, indeed. Matt Harmon, everybody, make sure you guys follow him on Twitter at @MattHarmon_BYB. Check out his YouTube channel, all this stuff. I definitely want to check out that Gabe Davis breakdown on receptionperception.com, so I'll be doing that. You guys should do that as well. And best of luck this week, man. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, best of luck is the phrase of the week, and same to everybody else out there. It's gonna be quite a different situation when we wake up on Sunday and this stuff is all changed.
See you, man. We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. Locks of the week, position by position. These are players that we have to have exposure to in NFL Week 15, we think, as long as there's not any crazy news after we record this. But we're going to bring it together all at the end to try and build the optimal DFS lineup live on stream. We're double dipping a little bit today with our next guest. Jake Seeley had a family member to attend to, so we'll keep him in our thoughts, obviously. So Rich Hribar is with us. You guys know him from sharpfootballanalysis.com, the worksheet, and on Twitter at Lord Reeves. We're going to go through our locks and then two of the most important games of the week from a stacking perspective after that. Reeves, how we living, man? Week 15, I mean, it's already just completely out of control. So thanks for doing this, man.
We are back. But who is in is the question, and who is going to remain in as we wait this out. I can't remember a week where every time I've created content and it's like instantly just up in flames. I mean, you do the video life, so I guess this happens once in a while, and I can just go and edit everything. But man, it has been a rough week so far to start it out.
Man, there's been a few weeks this year where like I'll go in and be like, okay, like I'll just edit part of this out. Like it's just scheduled, like it hasn't actually been posted yet. And then there's weeks where it's like every time I do that, something else happens. I'm just like, all right. Well, see you guys Sunday. Most of this stuff is good. I think that we did get a little bit lucky because we got the Tyler Lockett stuff that broke a little bit earlier. That would have been unfortunate if that would have happened directly after this, but we'll do the best we can. I think going through this still super valuable in terms of like a couple different players at each position. We're going to go through running back a little bit differently on this one also, but let's go ahead and just jump right into this one, Reeves, because I think that at the quarterback position, pretty clearly, I think it's between two guys at the top. Kyler Murray 7,900 on FanDuel at Detroit. Aaron Rodgers 7,500 on FanDuel at Baltimore. Definitely think that there's some things that could be in flux across the board on this slate, but these are the top two quarterbacks, at least from my perspective. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, and I mean Kyler's like 88, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I must have totally forgot to change his price. There you go. 7,900 Kyler, lock him in.
That'd have been cool. 7,900 would have been dope. We'd have saved an extra grand of salary.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Kyler didn't have like a spike game on Monday, but that's only because he didn't throw a touchdown. He threw a pair of interceptions, but he still had 17 fantasy points, 383 passing yards, 61 rushing yards. He's actually run, since he's come back from injury, pretty well the past 2 weeks, which was something before he had the injury we didn't see a lot of. So that's pretty promising. And he gets just kind of a quick turnaround at a great spot against the Lions. We attack every week. They're 31st in the NFL in passing points allowed per pass attempt, 31st in yards allowed per pass attempt, 28th in touchdown rate allowed to opposing passers. And we lose DeAndre Hopkins here, but we seen Cliff operate without Hopkins and Kyler Murray, and it forced him to get more creative. So hopefully we see that kind of come back because it kind of went away on Monday night a little bit. But yeah, Kyler against the Lions indoors, lock it in.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the starting points on this entire slate, especially with everything in flux. It's really nice to just kind of grab a top-end quarterback because I think there's going to be a ton of value. Like, regardless of what happens, I think there's going to be some stuff that opens up and makes things relatively easy. We'll get to it a little bit later at wide receiver, but obviously with Jalen Waddle being out, Devonte Parker is under 5K. I did get that price right, Reeves, which is completely insane. But let's talk about Rodgers for a second because he's still relatively cheap as well. And I think one of the more popular stacks on this slate is still just going to be Rodgers to Devonte Adams. And just because it's chalky doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. Again, with not a ton to pay up for, it is kind of an odd slate. No Chiefs, a bunch of other high-flying players from a running back position that are just not there to pay up for. So Rodgers at 7,500 against Baltimore seems like he's in a great spot.
Yeah, Rodgers playing on Sunday night kind of locked him in for probably a price bump that he would have had because he just had another tremendous week. I mean, everyone's talking about Rodgers' toe throughout the week, but the last 3 games he's been on the field, I mean, he has been absolutely sensational. It's really kind of channeled his 2020 MVP form, 10 touchdown passes, no interceptions. He's thrown for 385, 307, and 341 the past 3 weeks. Also, we always talk about when you face the Ravens, you got to be prepared to go against the blitz. I mean, Rodgers has been awesome against the blitz of late. I mean, on Sunday night, he was 15 to 17 passing against the blitz for 9.5 yards per pass attempt. So if the Ravens want to keep dialing up that pressure, it's going to be tough against Aaron Rodgers. He's been a top 3 scoring quarterback the past 3 weeks. The Ravens are a complete pass funnel defense. They're allowing 17 passing points per game to opposing quarterbacks. That's 29th. just under a half passing point per pass attempt. That's 26th. Rodgers is third in the league in passing points per pass attempt. And the Ravens have also allowed a league high 16 touchdowns from outside of the red zone. So we're going to get some splash playability here as well. So with Rodgers playing on Sunday night, I think you take advantage. And hopefully he goes a little bit overlooked. He won't, but we're gonna pump him into a bunch of lineups.
Yeah, I think one of the big decision points is actually going to be at wide receiver. So let's roll right into that. We're going to save running back until the end because it's such a unique slate with all the COVID implications. So I think one of the biggest decision points on this entire slate, Reeves, is going to be Cooper Kupp versus Davonte Adams. Cooper Kupp 9K versus Seattle. Davonte Adams 8,900 at Baltimore. And if we're looking at the Sims, if we were to simulate the slate 10,000 times, Cooper Kupp and Davonte Adams actually are all in the top 3 in terms of optimal rate, 25+% for both of those guys. So is this a situation, Reeves, where we just try and get in both of these guys to our lineups, or are we trying to choose between one or the other? Like, how do you differentiate these guys at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it is tough. They're both expensive, but I think you still can get them both into lineups if you need to this week, the way this slate lines up. I mean, we kind of talked a little bit before the show, and, just even looking at the running backs I have ranked highly this weekend. I mean, there's none of them are on this slate. I mean, Najee Harris by default is like the RB1 on the slate. Leonard Fournette's on Sunday night. Alvin Kamara's on Sunday night. Austin Eckler is maybe playing tonight. Hopefully, we've got Jonathan Taylor on Saturday. It's just all these guys are off this slate. Even guys like David Montgomery and Dalvin Cook are on Monday night. So we don't even have those guys available to us. So I think you can probably fit these two guys in. I mean, Kupp has been, obviously we're out of superlatives at this point, the season he's having, and he just had a career high in receptions last week. Now we have no Odell Beckham to free up even more like target opportunity. He's also facing a Seattle defense that's 25th in the NFL already in points allowed to opposing slot receivers. He had 7 catches for 92 yards against Seattle earlier in the season in a game where Robert Woods had 12 catches for 150 yards. So he's not even available this week. So, I mean, Kupp's basically going to get as much target volume as he can handle in this game. Really no reason to go away from him. And we just saw Seattle again, their issues against the slot. They allowed 8 receptions for 98 yards to Houston slot receivers last week.
Man, it just seems like such a smash spot for him each and every week. Like, I've gotten to the point, I've come full circle.
He should be almost 10, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, like he's almost like, I can't remember which season it was. It was like we were discussing if we should be putting Michael Thomas at like running back prices when CMC was over 10K and we had Saquon Barkley, those type of guys. And it's gotten to the point now where like it's almost better than the Michael Thomas stuff, right? Because he's just seeing so much usage and he has such a role in the red zone that, yeah, I mean, when there's not a lot to pay up for, I think Cooper Kupp is a great option. Davonte Adams against Baltimore, it still seems like the way that this Baltimore defense shapes up, like Davonte Adams and Rodgers could have an absolute field day in this one, right? Like that's what I'm saying. It's hard to differentiate between the two, but if you're playing both, like adding Davonte Adams seems like a reasonable roster construction move this week, right?
Yeah, I mean, Adams has gone along with Rodgers for this ride. He's starting to look a lot like he did last year. Over the beginning of the season, he was getting a lot of catches, some okay yardage, not really scoring touchdowns, but I mean, he's just been in the bag the last 3 weeks, over 100 yards in each of the past 3 games. He just had his second multi-touchdown game on Sunday night over that span. And the Ravens, we have touched on this multiple times this year. I mean, they're just bludgeoned by injuries in the back end. They're now 29th in the league in yardage allowed per game to opposing wide receiver ones. Over the past 6 weeks, Baltimore is allowing plus 6.9 points per game to opposing wide receiver ones than what they average per game coming into the matchup. So, I mean, if we get a little bump even on what Davonte Adams is averaging per game, I mean, you're looking at another huge potential ceiling week and just easily natural pairing stack with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, moving down the salary spectrum just a tad, Deontay Johnson, 7,200. Like, he's still top 10 in the Sims if we even look at it from that perspective. But I guess jamming in all of these wide receivers and just trying to piece together the running back position is kind of where I'm leaning right now. But it just seems like, despite how, I guess, poor Ben has been most of the season, like Deontay Johnson has been so consistent. So is that $7,500 price tag a little bit too expensive, or on this slate still a priority for you, think?
I actually think when you look at it in context of Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams, it's actually a little bit low. So he doesn't
Mhm.
have that quite the ceiling of those two players, but when you look at from a floor perspective, he actually does have as good a floor as those guys. He actually probably should be bumped up a little bit higher
Mhm.
in relation to that, because I mean he had another 10 targets last Thursday. He did drop a touchdown, and he's only dropped 2 passes this year before everyone brings the Deontay dropped, kind of narrative into the things. But he now has 10 or more targets in 5 straight games. He has double-digit targets in every game but 2 this season. The Titans' secondary is where they've been most vulnerable all season. They're a little bit of a pass funnel, too. They're really good against the run. They are facing a league high 24 targets per game to opposing wide receivers. They're also 20th in yards per target allowed to opposing wide receivers, 22nd in touchdown rate to opposing wide receivers. So I think if you can't fit in both of these guys, Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams that we talked about, your next best option is to save that little bit of salary if you can't do it, and just go down to Deontay Johnson as your wide receiver too.
Yeah, wrapping up the wide receiver locks, 4,300 for Devonte Parker with no Jalen Waddle.
Not
I
on
do
this
think.
site. That's the other site.
Oh my God, dude, I'm just a disaster on prices right now. That was like the reason I was like, oh my God, 4,300 for Parker. All right, so he's 5,800. Still, anything below 6K seems like a really nice value for him. And I love that you're keeping me honest with that, Reeves, because I'm gonna have to go back and edit this now. But that would have been even worse if I didn't. But man,
We
so
don't
we're
want to
talking.
mislead anybody.
This is true. Yeah, 4,300. I was like, I haven't seen a wide receiver at this price all year. Harmon was telling us though that this offense is kind of built towards like the Waddle type of like scenario, not necessarily like this old Devonte Parker that we think of, or at least that I think of as like this kind of alpha. It's not really the way this offense really operates anymore. So, do you still have a lot of interest in Parker this week with obviously the target share that's up for grabs, or I guess are you a little bit nervous if the ownership gets out of control?
No, I think at this price and this matchup, and especially when you pair with what the Dolphins have going on in their backfield, COVID related, I don't see any way that you kind of just ignore this volume. Because at least if you want to pay down, you say, well, I'm going to take Gabe Davis at 49 and save 1,000. That's fine. But like Gabe Davis still could have 5 targets, right? Like and we don't know if Josh Allen's really healthy. I mean, Devontae Parker has still, if you look at his game log, he's still regularly hitting 7 targets per game. Now you remove Jalen Waddle, who the past 3 games has had 26.5%, 32%, and 27% of the team targets. The last game that Devontae Parker didn't play in week 12, Mac Hollins and Albert Wilson both ran sub 50% of the routes. So, I mean, those guys still, it's not like those guys are just going to jump up and grab a big role, because they didn't
Right.
have a big role when Parker was off the field.
Mhm.
So he's going to get just we kind of have the passing game funneled through him. We don't know what running backs are going to be available for the Dolphins. They can't really run the football anyways. Even if you go back to the game they faced the Jets, they stacked carries, but they didn't run the ball effectively. The Jets are 29th in yards allowed per target to opposing wide receivers. It's just a really good kind of matchup for him to run into, and a volume opportunity at this price that I think it's really hard to kind of avoid him, at least in cash games. Like, he's super hard to avoid.
Yeah, before we move on, I'm going to bug everyone out there again to subscribe to the second YouTube channel, because some of the weekly content that you're used to seeing over here is actually going to be exclusively over on the second channel moving forward. We're going to spread things out a little bit more. Don't want you guys to miss anything. There is a link in the description for that. We're going to move on to the tight end locks of the week here. Reeves, Mark Andrews, 7,400 versus Green Bay. We have Zach Ertz, 5,300 at Detroit, and then Gesicki kind of right in the middle at 6,200 against the Jets. So a lot of different salary ranges we can go to at the tight end position, but definitely some nice options. Ertz, especially if you're trying to go on the value side of things with Nuke out, is kind of standing out to me.
Yeah, Ertz was the first guy I kind of circled this week that would probably get steamed up pretty much on FanDuel, especially from just like a core perspective. Because when you look at his splits with and without DeAndre Hopkins in the lineup, the past 3 games the 3 games he played without DeAndre Hopkins in the lineup, he had target shares of 19.2%, 20.7%, and 20.5%. Compare that now to the final 3 games he played with DeAndre Hopkins in the lineup, were just 12.5%, 13.3%, and 14.6%. And he gets to face the Lions, who are absolutely terrible. 7.9 yards per target to opposing tight ends. That's 26th in the NFL. 71.4% catch rate on those targets. That's 24th. So, I mean, he goes into a really good matchup. He's our cheap kind of Kyler stack, especially with people trying to diagnose like what receiver gets the benefit of
Right.
DeAndre Hopkins being out, which kind of really doesn't have a clear-cut answer. All those guys have kind of cannibalized each other at some point this season. And you just look at Zach Ertz and the target share he's had without DeAndre Hopkins, and it's been so rock steady at that price. He's kind of the guy if you're not going to really pay up for at the position this week.
It's kind of a nice little skinny stack too, because then you can kind of insulate just not picking the wrong wide receiver, and then you can take care of the tight end slot and still get the upside from Kyler if he just goes absolutely nuts on the ground. So I like that one quite a bit. Paying all the way up for Mark Andrews, I think is going to be like somewhat of a unique like roster construction. But man, again, like we'll get to running back, but it's just so barren that maybe you'll have the salary to do it. But tell us why you like Andrews this week.
Yeah, I like Andrews for a couple reasons. One, he's priced just below George Kittle, who's been on just an insane heater the past 2 weeks, and he's won me a lot of money too, and a lot of other people. So I think if people are just
take your victory lap.
Yeah, so if people are going to pay up, I think they're just going to go to Kittle or go down. So why save the 400, right? Is what people are going to. I don't think he'll be as popular on FanDuel as he probably should be, especially with the usage he's getting. Remember, he now leads the tight ends in every category, just about. He leads all tight ends now in catches, yards. He's fourth in touchdowns at 6. He also has averaged 9.7 targets per game over the past 6 weeks, with a low total of 8. So with Kittle's been awesome, but like we still always have like that one thing with Kittle, right? Like when do they do like what they did 3 weeks ago against the Vikings, where he just has 2 targets?
And he just blocks the whole game.
And you just block the whole game.
So
and like the Falcons could do that. Maybe it doesn't happen. I'm not saying that's going to be the outcome, but Andrews is like going to be pretty sturdy here against the Packers in terms of target volume. Also, if Tyler Huntley ends up playing, he's targeted Mark Andrews a team high 23% of the time. Mark Andrews caught 17 of 19 targets from Tyler Huntley for 184 yards and a touchdown. So I think from a game theory perspective, also he could be a natural run back with our Rodgers-Adams stacks. I think that he's probably going to be under-owned this week.
Yeah, let's wrap up tight end with Gesicki, because he's actually the highest frequency tight end in the Sims at this moment on FanDuel. And what's interesting, and I think we'll see this ownership creep up, of course, with the Waddle news. He's only at about 5% right now, but he's popping in over 16% of the optimal lineups, which is very high for a tight end. So definitely have some interest there. If you're going to be choosing one between Parker and Gesicki, do you think that Gesicki might be a little bit under-owned with everyone just like flocking over to Parker? Because I'm starting to kind of lean that way, actually.
Yeah, I would assume Parker's probably going to have double the rostership of Gesicki. But he could run him in doubles still. I mean, people were definitely looking to, I think, run to a doubles with Waddle and Parker in the first place because just how much salary you could save. So you can still run doubles with him, or he can be your one-off. He can even just be your one-off player at 1 o'clock, like one of the early guys to play because we look at the Jets, and they've got, they allowed Dallas Goedert to get there a couple weeks ago when we played him. And they've just been torched by tight ends this season. A league high 9.1 yards per target, 74.7% catch rate, 7.7 touchdown rate. That's 25th in the league. Tight ends have really kind of cooked in this year. When Miami played them early in the season, Gesicki had a modest, 5 for 50, but Dolphins tight ends combined for 10 for 106 in that game. He also is the one guy we can count on being on the field for the Dolphins. I mean, he's 6th among all tight ends in route participation rate. He's 3rd amongst all tight ends in targets. He's coming off a season high 11 targets last game too. The yardage hasn't really been there, but we know he does carry being a red zone presence. He can get in the box for us. I don't think he's necessarily a cash game play. I think you just pay down for Ertz in that scenario. But I do think Gesicki now with Waddle being out and this matchup, it opens up a door for him, especially now with leverage against Devonte Parker.
All right, so let's talk about running back this week. It's in complete flux, like we said before. I do think that we'd be doing you guys a little bit of a disservice if we were to this early in the week to just recognize that there's locks, because at this point, like, there's a lot of stuff that can change. A few things that kind of come to mind, Reeves, and you can kind of take this or any direction you would like. Both Cardinals and Rams running back situations, definitely want to see what happens with the news there. And then Michael Carter also kind of enters the discussion. So if that tells you guys where we're at running back, that's probably all you need to know. But yeah, man, looks like it's going to be a fun week. What are your thoughts at running back?
Yeah, and you also have the Dolphins situation too. I mean, if Myles Gaskin were to get cleared, we'd have that, but we have to wait on this information. Michael Carter, I think, is everyone's placeholder right now as like the salary saver. Where he is, before he got injured with his ankle injury. I mean, he had ripped out. He was an RB2 or better in 7 straight games. Was kind of productive. He isn't productive in the Dolphins game. This is the game he got hurt in, was the Dolphins game. So he's probably everyone's placeholder right now. He can catch the football a little bit. They're completely banged up. Like, they have no receivers healthy. So they're kind of funneling stuff underneath already. So I think that everyone's kind of waiting with him in the lineup to see what he opens up. And we're really kind of looking at, particularly number one, the Cardinal situation. And I just don't want to keep beating on the Detroit matchup, but also Detroit is awful against running backs. It's one of those things. You have a high game total. It's actually, this is where we are right now in this Week 15 slate, is that the highest game total on the main slate involves the Detroit Lions.
That's rough.
So that just kind of puts everything into perspective this week. But they're allowing 17.8 rushing points per game to opposing running backs. That's 29th in the NFL, to go along with 10.5 receiving points per game, which is 19th. So if James Conner isn't available and Chase Edmonds comes back, there is an opportunity to have another cheap running back in play, opens up a lot of salary. If Edmonds doesn't play and Connor does play, it gives us another kind of like lean as a top end running back, although we would have some trepidation due to his health on Monday night. So we're waiting on that news. The Rams situation, we don't know if Darrell Henderson's going to be back after being placed on the COVID list on Sunday. Seattle's been pretty decent against the run on a per play basis, but teams run so many plays against them that it doesn't matter. They face 26.5 rushing attempts from opposing backfields in per game. That's 31st in the NFL. When these teams played earlier in the season, Los Angeles backs had 30 touches for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. Sony has already had 47 of 48 running back touches the past 2 weeks with Darrell Henderson off the board. He's just too cheap because he played on Monday night. If Darrell Henderson wouldn't be available, he would be in play as well. But that's kind of where we are waiting on this news, because we hinted upon, like, when you look at just like if you go anywhere, whoever sets your favorite rankings, and you just go down the list of guys at the top, they're not available on the slate. Nick Chubb's not available. Dalvin Cook's not available. Jonathan Taylor's not available. Kamara's not available. Fournette's not available. We've got Joe Mixon. We've got Najee Harris if you want to pay up for. Not in the greatest of spots. We're waiting on Elijah Mitchell. We have no idea if Elijah Mitchell's going to play. So we are kind of in a no man's land of kind of waiting to see what's going to happen here. Like you said, it would be a real disservice to come in and just say, like, Ezekiel is default lock of the week. Like, that doesn't help anybody out at all right now. Antonio Gibson, that doesn't help anybody right now. So, I mean,
really
we're going to have to follow the news. But the other, receivers locks of the week. We got a lot of pass catchers.
Tons of receivers.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, maybe they'll let us play like Debo or Patterson at running back. That'd be nice.
We can play Patterson at running back. Yeah. Debo would be cool.
That'd be cool. All right. God, dude, there's so much stuff. Like, see Pat for like a few weeks, you could play him at wide receiver or running back, and then he's exclusively a running back. And yeah, the Debo running back would be nice on this slate in particular. But before we build a lineup here, Reeves, I want everyone out there to pause this video. Let me know in the comments your lock of the week. Hopefully it's not a running back, but we do want to hear from you guys. And this lineup that we're about to build will be in the listener league at FanDuel.com/Holka. So make sure you guys get in there before it fills. $5 rake free, big prices. More importantly, it is the battle of the guests, Reeves versus TJ. I'm going to throw one in there this week as well. So Reeves, you ready to build this team?
Yeah, let's go for it. This is kind of like the locks of the week one. So we'll pick some players that we picked here.
Cool. Where do you want to start this one then? So I guess if anyone's watching this later, we did go a little bit more in detail to Seattle and LA Rams, also the Dallas and New York Giants games. So let's try and do somewhat of a different stack that maybe doesn't include those two games.
Yeah, let's do the Rodgers stack. Let's do Rodgers and Adams. And you know what? Let's make this a double and throw our boy MVS in here as well.
Talking about guys that have won us a lot of money. I'm always in for MVS forever now after that.
For the same reason I said, Baltimore's allowed the most receiving touchdowns outside of the red zone in the NFL. So we'll take him. He did run more routes than Lazard.
Do we have enough salary, you think, to bring it back with Andrews on this one?
Yeah, let's put Andrews in. Well, if not, we'll do some rigging here. But let's run Andrews back. So let's do the stack with the locks we talked about. Go ahead and throw Bengals defense in.
Okay. I'm in on that. 3,400, really nice price for them too. So 6,900, pretty nice amount of salary the rest of the way here, Reeves. We can do. We could probably jam in one more stud if we really wanted to.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. Yeah, let's throw Cooper Kupp in here.
Let's see what happens, man. Because this is the type of build that I feel like we're going to be working with. So do we want to put in a couple of these running back placeholders? Like, I think it's probably a decent chance that we get one of these guys down here, right?
Well,
at least.
Yeah, go ahead for now and just put Carter in. Mm-hmm. And, just because we talked about, people could do some maneuvering as the news opens up throughout the week. We'll throw Carter and James Robinson in here.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to expand a little bit on Robinson.
Well,
he's so cheap.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I was already going to be on him, and now it's kind of like everyone is like, well, I want to play James Robinson because Herb got fired. I wanted to play him with Herb there still because I thought it was still a good matchup for him. And, he still did have – I know he only had 6 touches last week, but he also only one one carry went to another running back. Also, Carlos Hyde is in concussion protocol, so they're favored for just the second time all season. I don't even know if they still win this game, but I do think that his volume is going to bounce back in this matchup, particularly. We turned to Rashad Penny last week in against this Houston defense. They are allowing 4.9 yards per carry to running backs. That's 31st. 19.8 rushing points per game. That's 31st. I think it's just a really good spot for him at this price to catch some flop lag. More people are going to be on him now, especially with the landscape. But we've already built such a kind of weird lineup that I'm not really worried about it. He hasn't practiced at all in the beginning of the week, like the last month. So I'm not too concerned yet, but keep tabs on him too, because he is still dealing with those heel and knee injuries. But he's played the last 3 games with no restrictions injury-wise, just performance-wise.
All right. Well, it's our last guy in here fits pretty well with just adding Van Jefferson with Cooper Kupp. I don't mind that. They're playing completely different roles. And then we're going to go ahead and move this thing, keep this thing moving. We have a lot to talk about here, Reeb. So before we get too carried away, I guess want to go into a couple of these games, the most important games, I think, from a stacking perspective. It's a really rough week for stacking across the board. So we're going to rip through these a little bit faster so we have time to build a game stack around these ideas at the end. But the first one that we're going to talk about, Seattle at LA Rams. The Seahawks are 4.5-point road dogs in this one, with a large percentage of both the public on the Rams, and the over-under does look to be about 45.5. Again, not a lot of big totals on this slate. The over is getting some early love from the sharps, though. So would you agree, Reeves, that this one has a chance to be like fantasy friendly? Like, it's pretty tough to like just identify games this week, it feels like.
I felt a lot better about it 45 minutes ago. Yeah. I came in here prepared to just go on this diatribe about how DK Metcalf's going to have triple the ownership of Tyler Lockett, and because everyone's trying to chase these games, and like they have like basically the same projection, and their ownership isn't syncing up at all. And like you can just keep playing Lockett, and you cannot keep playing Lockett. You will not be playing in this game. So I'm glad that we at least saved face on that take.
Oh, this entire video, we wouldn't have been able to upload this. It just would have been like into the ether. But yeah, I guess, how do you think that things like drastically change in this game across the board? Like, does this even limit, you think, like the Rams guys, just because maybe this game doesn't shoot out? And I don't know, maybe one wide receiver shouldn't move the line a ton, but I'm a little bit nervous now that maybe this game gets a little bit gross. Second game in the division. I don't know. What is this impact from a fantasy perspective outside of DK Metcalf just being extremely popular?
Yeah, DK is going to get a ton of love, and I think he was going to be the cool kid play this week anyways.
People love DK, man.
Well, and I think just the way his price is and how close he's been there, I know horseshoes and hand grenades, like none of that stuff counts, but like he had a touchdown called back last week. He's wide open on a slant route for another touchdown that Russ sails on him, and he draws a defensive holding in the end zone on another play. Like, he was really close. He also has 8 or more targets in 4 of the past 5 games. He scored 2 touchdowns the last 2 times these teams have played with Jalen Ramsey on the field. We don't know if Jalen Ramsey is going to be available to play in this game. So I just think he was going to be really popular anyways. And in my stuff last night, he was showing to be basically triple the ownership of Tyler Lockett. And I was like, oh, goodness gracious, I'll just play Tyler Lockett. But now he's going to be really popular. We'll have to wait on the Rams defensive news, kind of see, because they're also down another cornerback as well right now. But rumor was that everyone was vaccinated there, so you just have to see if they clear and test out of protocol. But if not, I mean, that stuff's still up in the air. I do think the Rams side is still relatively safe because they do what they do, right? Like they're not going to like really slow the game down to a point. They will in the fourth quarter and late, but I don't think like if they're going to get out to like a 21 or like 21-3 lead, like they're just going to turtle. Like, it's not really what they do.
True.
So, and with Odell Beckham being out, that just inflates Cooper Kupp like even amazingly more. I mean, he's actually almost, like I said, we can make the argument he's underpriced.
Yeah.
He now has 151 targets on the year. There are 4 games to go, and just even if you said, well, there's an extra game, even if you said there was 3 games to go, he already has 151 targets, 20 more than the next highest player. He has 113 catches. That's 19 more than the next closest player. Seattle is 25th in the NFL in guarding opposing slot receivers. They just allowed 8 for 98 out of the slot to Houston slot receivers last weekend. Now, we also don't have Robert Woods in this game. When Cooper Kupp faced the Seattle Seahawks earlier this season, he had 92 yards on 7 catches in a game where Robert Woods had 12 catches for 150 yards. So, I mean, he's just going to get so much value in this game. You hope that just, Seattle can kind of muster up some production. We didn't talk about it too with DK Metcalf. The one thing that does give me a little bit of pause is that Tyler Lockett has operated as basically the lid lifter in this offense.
Right.
If you go to sharpfootballanalysis.com, my guy Dan Pizzuto wrote an article on this. He already has the most receiving yards on throws over 20 yards downfield since Sports Info Solutions has been tracking this stuff.
Wow.
And there was 4 games to go, in the season. So, I mean, DK Metcalf, they've kind of, since Shane Waldron took over, remember the big emphasis was like, we're going to get DK more involved underneath and expand his route tree. Well, they've done that, but it's taken away from the downfield targets for him. So maybe it does help that Lockett's out there, but they don't really have anyone to kind of else fill that role. I mean, Freddie Swain and Dwayne Eskridge aren't going to come in and play Tyler Lockett's position. They just can't. So it could just stymie this entire offense, which already is very catawampus as it is. Like they lead the league in 3 and outs. They rely on those big plays that generate offense. Even last week against the Texans, their touchdowns were 55 yards, 32 yards, and 47 yards. Like they did it the 1 yarder to Gerald Everett. I'm sorry, but they rely on big plays to score touchdowns. So if that's removed from the offense and DK can't get those big plays, I mean, this offense could be bad. It could be really bad.
That's what I'm nervous about, man. That's what I'm the most worried about is that they're just not. You made a good point though. Like the Rams are going to do their thing regardless. They're not one of those teams that really does anything different when they're way ahead anyways. And Cooper Kupp, man, like very rarely do you see a guy priced at $9K, yet across the industry, he's still projecting as a really strong value, even point per dollar, which is outrageous. He's the number 1 player in the Sims. We were showing that graphic here a couple minutes ago. 33% of the optimal lineups, if you were to simulate this slate 10,000 times, do have Cooper Kupp in them. Definitely says a lot about Cooper Kupp. Also says a lot about the running backs on this slate. Also, I know we talked about it a little bit on the Locks of the Week video, Reeves, but what do you expect to shake out here with the Rams running back situation? Obviously, there's some stuff that could be, I guess, working through still throughout the rest of this week with Sony Michel and Henderson, right?
Yeah, this is a big gray area, even if Darrell Henderson plays. Darrell Henderson, who was put on the COVID IR on Sunday, we still have to wait and see if he's cleared to come back. Sony Michel handled 47 to 48 backfield touches with him out the past 2 games. But there was also rumors that even prior to week 14 or week 13, that Sean McVay was leaning towards giving Sony more work anyways and kind of, improving the interior running game of the Rams. So what if Darrell Henderson plays and it's still the Sony show? That's still something that's hanging in the air and in the balance here that we don't know.
Kind of like the Dylan and Aaron Jones stuff for a bit, where like Aaron Jones came back, yet Dylan kind of still had a decent sized role, like much more than before, I guess because Aaron Jones wasn't all the way back type of thing. Like I could see that. I mean, then maybe both these guys aren't valuable, right? And people can start hammering Henderson, whoever it may be, right? This stuff always is like the worst for fantasy.
Right. And it's all, what it reminds me a lot of is the situation with Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette.
That's a better example. Yep.
Where Leonard Fournette, is sharing time, not really, and then he just goes bonkers at the end of the season. Ronald Jones has an injury in like week 12, and it opens the door for Leonard Fournette, and Leonard Fournette just like runs away with the job because we do want the running back that plays for the Rams. Like we have interest if there's a lead back here.
Yeah, can I roster like LA Rams running back instead of either of these guys? I'll pay double. Like that'd be great.
Yeah, can I pay double? So it's going to be really intriguing to see if even if Darrell Henderson's active, if Sony ends up being a really good play anyway, especially in tournaments. The other running back in this game also is going to get some ownership. Rashad Penny won me all the pennies last week. I don't know if I'm going to chase that though. We did see that Pete said he deserves a shot at being a lead back, but this is a really tough draw, I think, for Penny to kind of run back what he did against Houston. I mean, you're not going to have 16 for 137 on the Rams. They're 3rd in the NFL in yards per carry allowed to running backs, 3.7 yards per carry. They've only allowed 3 running backs this entire season to rush for 70 yards against them. Even on Monday, I mean, Connor gets in the box twice, but he has 31 rushing yards.
Right.
So Penny's going to really have to be involved as a pass catcher, which we haven't seen yet. And he ran just 13 routes on Sunday, or continue to find the end zone. He's probably not someone I'm going to chase. I'll take what I got last week and probably not really chase it. And then we also didn't talk about Van Jefferson getting the bump too with Odell being out. He's caught more than 3 passes in just 2 of his past 9 games, but he's going to be really kind of bumped up the target ladder here. I would say he's probably going to see at least 7 targets as a floor. And he's already been a full-time player since Johnny Munt's been hurt anyways, being on the field for 100% of the snaps. And it's not like they're just going to give Ben Skowronek a bunch of targets. Van Jefferson at his price being locked in on Monday and then catching another touchdown for the 3rd straight game is going to be really popular as well. And then, don't ignore Tyler Higbee. At least I should at least mention him.
False positive, right, on his COVID test?
Yeah, he is back already with the team and practicing. He had a false positive. He does lead all tight ends in route participation rate, 86%. And he's 3rd among all tight ends in end zone targets. Just the yardage and the production hasn't been there. But, it could be a spot, too, where he gets overlooked. Because we've gone to the Higbee thing a couple times. He's got very much like Gesicki, who we talked about in the locks of the week. We don't want to just ignore him because he's failed us before, because the spot does signal he would be involved more in the offense and in a spot that we want attachment to the offense.
Yeah, I have some interest in Higbee actually at that price, 5,200 for him. Even before you take out like Odell Beckham from the projections, he was looking like a reasonable value. And I am trying to kind of pay down at tight end specifically, just because I would prefer to get all the way up at quarterback to like Rodgers or Kyler, and I would also prefer to play Cooper Kupp and Davante Adams. So I'm gonna have to find some saving somewhere to do that. So maybe going to Higbee in this game would make some sense. Anything else on the Seattle side that kind of stands out to you? I think it could end up being just a little bit gross. But man, like Gerald Everett, I just can't stomach the Gerald Everett thing after I saw that ball literally hit him in the stomach and it hit the ground in the end zone. So man, I'm really struggling. I don't think I'm going to go back to the Penny stuff. So I'm with you on that. But man, that kind of covers it. This game has plays. Obviously the Lockett stuff would have made it a little bit more enticing. But if people move away from it just because of that, I think there is some intrigue here in tournaments. But man, it just speaks towards there's just not a lot of amazing game stacks on this slate in particular. Did we miss anyone?
No, not a lot of run backs. Like I said, it was setting up for Lock to be such a great tournament play this week.
Yeah. All right. I'm with you. Let's go ahead and move over. We're going to build a lineup. Before we do that, I want you guys to take a quick second and subscribe to the new YouTube channel. I have a second YouTube channel. I shouldn't say the new YouTube channel, but a bunch of the content that was going out on the main channel. We're going to have some clips as well going through, but needed to split things up a little bit going forward. So I want to make sure that you guys check that out. Link in the description. We'll bring you right to it. Don't want you guys to miss anything. So if we're starting on this game, I would imagine that we're probably going with the Stafford side, but I'm open to anything with this one.
Yeah, we'll go Stafford, Kupp, Van.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
And then I guess we have to play DK now as the run back.
Yeah, I guess we
do. I'm
do.
not super worried about his ownership with this build, but it would have been a great Lockett spot.
Oh my God, dude, he's 6,800. This is outrageous. I honestly didn't realize that Metcalf was that cheap until right this second. So
then go ahead and throw Davonte Adams on this team too. Why the hell not?
Yeah, I like that. Defense. We did play Cincinnati. They're probably one of the better ones all the way down there. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Yeah, I think we can go 49ers on this one based on what I think we can just have left.
We're going to have salary. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So go ahead and go, because remember, DK is we played Van Jefferson and DK in this team, so it already opened up. So we can go 49ers here, and then we can just play our token placeholders of Zach Ertz, James Robinson, and Michael Carter.
If we're going to play Zach Ertz, should we just add Higbee to this? I know that I tend to overstack in some of the contests that I'm in, but we might as well just throw Higbee on this one, right? And just triple it?
Sure, yeah. You just play this in a smaller field.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, 5,200, man. I think I could just rather correlate it. Yeah, okay. So we got the onslaught with Rams with DK coming back. We do have Adams on this team and the 49ers defense, 6,100. The rest of the way, 2 running backs that we have to find, which is not fun.
Just plug in the 2 placeholders of James Robinson and Michael Carter, and if news opens up, you can either go up to Chase Edmonds. We might be able to, we could do some rigging and go up to Sony if we do some maneuverability with the defense. Lots of things, but I say right now the 2 default running back placeholders are Robinson, Carter, and then just keep in mind that we'll be doing some maneuverability as news comes out throughout the week.
Works for me. Game number 2, we have Dallas at the New York Giants. The Cowboys are massive 10.5-point road favorites in this one. The Sharps haven't flinched so far. 81% of the money despite just 46% of the betting tickets. The over-under is nearly as interesting. Reeves 44.5. The Sharps are pretty heavily invested on the over in this one without a ton of slam dunk stacking spots. We've talked about it all week. What were your initial thoughts on Cowboys and Giants?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of these things where you look at the Cowboys, they're probably going to come in under-owned because they've kind of meandered their way through kind of games recently. Dak is now basically on FanDuel priced the same price as Tua Tagovailoa. That's where we are right now with Dak. But I say at his price, I'm definitely willing to keep entertaining, running some Cowboy stacks out here,
Mhm.
especially on a team that has a 27.5 point team total on this slate, particularly. A lot of people are just, going back to the calf injury at Dak, and I definitely believe that's part of the process. I also believe that it's also a combination of other elements as well. No Tyron Smith has been in and out of the lineup. He's not going to play again this week. They've really rotated some offensive linemen. They've also rotated wide receivers. Coming into Sunday, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb had played just 26 snaps together. Obviously, having all three of those guys in the field didn't unlock Dak. But remember, we had a weird game, too, with the Cowboys last week. It was 24-0 at the half. They had a
Right.
defensive touchdown. Just really weird. It never really kind of got there in terms of like being a fire environment. We also totally called that if the Washington gets flooded, Antonio Gibson is going to be like a complete high and dry guy.
Reeves,
So
you
just
called
not,
that, by the way. You were one of the only people I talked to all week that was like, hey, this Gibson thing is not an absolute lock. Like everyone's pretending it is, man. If this game ends up going sideways, and that's exactly what we saw, man. So good call on that one. I wish I
I got
listened to
lucky.
you.
I got super lucky because I played 0% Gibson and 0% Jeff Wilson last
Oh, so
week.
this is how you won all the money and the penny stuff. Jesus,
Yeah, I played
man.
Penny and didn't play those guys.
Good
So
job,
like,
man.
yeah, I
Why are
got
you
it.
even on the show, man? You should be on a beach somewhere.
We did good. We did good. Yeah, I wish that was the case. But I am curious to go back to Dak, especially at his price, because he gets a lot too. Because where he's priced compared to Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's just probably Aaron Rodgers is just going to draw a lot more interest, I believe.
Mhm.
New York is 20th in passing points allowed per game. Dak already threw for 302 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Giants already earlier in the season. I know it's not transitive property, but we also in the span of where Dak's been kind of up and down. When he's hit, he's had QB2 and QB3 scoring games. So it's not like he's been like the QB10 and like barely had a good week. He still has shown he has spike weeks in him, like
Mhm.
absolute, like really good spike weeks. So even with some volatility, I think that makes stacking Dallas in tournaments still a really good idea. We had Ezekiel Elliott come out this week and say that he is feeling the best he ever felt. I will say with the Zeke thing, again, game script was really weird last week, but the last two opponents that the Cowboys have faced are ranked number 1 and number 2 in rushing points allowed per game to running backs. So as bad as Zeke has looked, and he has not had any type of explosion, he's also run into two just absolutely horrendous matchups that have been horrendous matchups for everybody. So I do think that his price, 6,700 with the volume he's getting on this slate, with no running backs being available, is kind of intriguing,
He's all
especially
over
in
optimal somehow, and I was going to ask you how that's even possible, man. Because if this is the best he's felt in a while, and that's how he looks, like that's terrifying to me.
I mean, he's 6,700, but like I said, who is there to pay up for a running back? I mean,
Sure,
like, are you like super excited to jam in Najee Harris at his price? Are
absolutely not.
you super excited to jam in Joe Mixon at his price, the way he's played the last 2 weeks against Denver?
You can plug
It's
holes in literally every single guy, like within like
Mhm.
7K and above on this slate, pretty much on the running
Yeah,
back
and I
slate.
mean, I'm not playing. No, not. I'm definitely not going my way to say play Zeke and Cash. Like he's a good play. I definitely think he has intrigue here. He's attached to a team as a 28-point team total.
Mhm.
A team I believe that's gonna move the ball because the Giants are bad, and the Giants are 24th, allowing 14.5 rushing points per game to running backs. They're 22nd and allowing 11.5 receiving points per game to running backs. We still don't know if Tony Pollard's gonna play. Remember, Corey Clement only had 3 touches in the first half of that game. The split only became because like the Cowboys they're up 24-0 at halftime.
Right.
So, I mean, coming out of a better matchup, and like, listen, I'm not saying like Zeke's gonna be a small mighty thing. I definitely don't believe that. He hasn't looked great for 6 weeks. So I don't believe that the switch is just gonna flip over. But I do
Yeah.
think in game stacks he has some intrigue. And then at the receiver side, we talked about a lot of receivers on the slate. Earlier in the locks video, we talked about paying up for Cup and Adams and Deontay Johnson. CeeDee Lamb is always in like this like very kind of weird spot in pricing, but also as a guy I definitely want to look at. He has been, now that he's moved into the slot, they're getting creative touches. They use him in the run game a little bit. That probably do with Pollard being out too. But he's also now at 33% and 26% of the team targets the past 2 games. He's another guy. He had 84 yards and a touchdown his teams played earlier in the season. He's been the most consistent Dallas player. He's the guy that's had the highest floor and the highest ceiling in terms of the passing game. And it's just a really good spot for him too, I believe as well. I don't know kind of what you do with Cooper and Gallup. It's kind of guesswork. Cooper's been that way all season.
Right.
Like, because even Cooper has a ton of games where he has touchdowns and like still not a lot of fantasy points. Last week, another example. Gallup was the lowest scoring receiver of the Cowboys receivers last week, but he did run a route on 90% of the team dropbacks. This is an 11 personnel team now too. With like Jarwin out, he did have 9 targets in that game still too. So he's cheap enough to where if you want to run doubles, you can probably run Gallup back too and just hope you hit in that. And then the Giant side's really easy because we're not going to play any of them. If you wanted to get cute, you could play Saquon Barkley. I did play Saquon Barkley. Someone dunked on me in the Holka video comments for playing Saquon Barkley.
Don't read the comments, man.
And I didn't deserve to get the suck out touchdown, but I did get it. The 95 yards of a touchdown from Barkley. The one thing to worry about with Barkley though is it looks like this ankle thing is kind of real. He missed practice on Wednesday with the ankle injury, and his snap and backfield share of touches did go down last week. So, if you're in season long leagues, if Booker's still out there, grab Booker. But he went from 57% of the backfield touches last week after 75%, 87% the 2 weeks prior. He had, so definitely keep an eye on Barkley the rest of the week. But how do you play any of the pass catchers on the Giants side?
The first thing I was going to say is like if you just sort by value in this game, it's like 5 Dallas guys and then the first Giants guy, right? Like they're not projecting very well at all for a million different reasons. I think that if you were just kind of lean into the Sims a little bit, you do have to kind of scroll down a little bit. But CeeDee Lamb and Ezekiel Elliott have separated pretty significantly in the Sims so far. We'll see what the ownership ends at with Zeke. I mean, he's projecting to be very chalky at this moment. Probably a lot to do with that price tag at 6,700. And I guess I'm not going to necessarily completely backtrack, but the brace he's come out and said has helped him feel more stable. And anytime you have a knee injury, like just you have to have confidence in that knee. You know what I mean? So I guess that's a positive.
Yeah, and like I said, Zeke, I think right now is another guy that's kind of a default placeholder for people as more stuff like news comes out. Because Chase Edmonds is 6,500 compared to 65 for Zeke. And if you get news that we're not going to have James Conner and Chase Edmonds comes back, I mean, Chase Edmonds is going to flip and be really popular. Yeah. At that same price as a pivot. I think people are getting to James Robinson as the week goes on. Sony Michel is 6,800, 100 more than Ezekiel Elliott if Darrell Henderson were to miss. So there's way where Zeke's like ownership right now on Thursday gets pulled down as the week goes on.
Yeah, the last kind of question I have for you before we build a team, like we talked a little bit about Michael Gallup, but Dalton Schultz's role seems to have like completely like gone away in some ways since everyone's been healthy. Like he's the one I'm the most worried about, I think. But at 5,600, he's still a reasonable option in stacks, I think. But would you prefer just to add on like Gallup? I guess Gallup versus Schultz, I think, is kind of tough for me right now.
Just based on the opportunity Schultz has had, I mean, he has 13% of the team targets over the past 8 games. Mm-hmm. He's out there. He's playing every snap. He's been in on 90% of the team dropbacks since Blake Jarwin got hurt. It's just that there's no targets finding him. So it's really kind of guesswork. I have no problem with it. I don't think I don't have any pushback or running a double with him, but the receivers are just getting a lot more volume than him. That's bankable.
Yeah. I would agree. Before we build this lineup, though, I want to ask you guys to take 30 seconds out of your day to help me out. RateThisPodcast.com/The Joe Holka Show. It would mean the absolute world if you could help me out with that. Really trying to build up the audio feed of this as well. Reeves, let's go ahead and build a lineup over on FanDuel. This will be in the Joe Holka Show Listener League, $5 rake free. Joe Holka, I guess I'm not exactly sure the best way to tell people to get there, but I guess the easiest way is just FanDuel.com/Holka. Where do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I think here we'll do Dak and Lamb. Mm-hmm. And then do you want to just add Zeke to this and we just try to monopolize all the touchdowns?
I think so. I think I'm fine. Even if he ends up being a placeholder on this one, like you said, I think that's one of the ones that would make sense. I'm just not that confident in Amari for sure, but also like pick your poison with Dalton Schultz and Gallup. You might just be wasting a tight end slot at that point if Schultz doesn't get there. I guess like it's burned in my head that he's like had some red zone targets and some deeper targets down the field, like into the end zone, but he hasn't really come down with any of them. So I don't know. I think I'm more comfortable with Zeke, as crazy as that sounds again, because I basically the entire day last week I was like, never again, why did I do this? But here we are. So do we want to force in a bring back? I don't think we necessarily have to. This is like one of the situations where we could just play Saquon,
it's tough.
but...
And I think, we might have been able to like talk ourselves either into Saquon or maybe even like guy like Sterling Shepard if we knew. The Giants have basically come out and said they're going to try to mix Jake Fromm in. Like, so it might be like a rotation like Cam Newton and Philip Walker have been. So that's that just kind of puts me off kind of the whole situation. So we'll just go ahead and just do what we've done in building rosters and just add Davante Adams and Cooper Kupp.
I mean, is there any other way to build like at this point? Like, I guess I want to ask you something quickly.
You just have to hope not enough people play both of them, right? Like,
yeah. So I think this is going to be like a popular path in some ways, like having one, maybe two of these guys. We talked a little bit in one of the other videos about Deontay.
Do you want to go down on a guy since we've done it?
I was asking you if maybe, like, I think Jamar Chase is in an amazing spot against Denver, like one of those teams that can get beat by the deep ball. Or is it the opposite? I always forget with Denver. They don't give up a lot of big plays, or is it the opposite? I know it's like pretty skewed.
No, they do. Heavily. When they do, they've allowed they're tied for the most touchdowns allowed on throws 20 yards or further.
Maybe that's
downfield.
what it was, the efficiency. Yeah.
So they don't give up like a lot of per play basis, but when they do give it up, they've given up a lot of big plays. We can also play Deontay if you want.
We could.
Like I said, we can go to Deontay, Chase Claypool in that range. We could play Devonte Parker on this. We can get to Gabriel Davis.
Do you have no interest in Debo? I guess it's hard because like the target share is really evaporated there. So if he doesn't really have like a big game on the ground or score a touchdown at that price, it's really tough to get there. All the targets have just gone to Kittle recently, right? Is that something?
My biggest problem with Debo, because I think he would make a good tournament play, is the salary.
Yeah.
Like the salary is the biggest hang up with Debo because there's no floor at 8,200. Because he's
right.
been living on long touchdown runs. Also, we have no idea, like, if Elijah Mitchell plays right now, we have no idea. Because if Elijah Mitchell were to play, would he even be used at running back that much? Because 2 of the 3 games he has been, Elijah Mitchell didn't play. And if Elijah Mitchell doesn't play, does that then make him a better play?
Right.
There's a lot of things with Debo that like are in the air right now. I just think that if you look at Debo, his usage, 8,200 is a tough ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to pay that for. Just think of it like if you're looking at him as a running back,
it's not like
right?
He's getting like 12 carries a game or like 14 carries a game. He's getting like 5 to 8 carries per game and then only seeing 1 to 4 targets.
Yeah.
Like
it's hard. It's really hard.
It's a lot to ask.
I'm just gonna keep getting just absolutely destroyed by efficiency with that play, but mentally it's really hard.
I mean, he's gonna keep scoring and sticking it to us, but I just think at his price, he's it's really tough to pay up for that.
I agree. Let's leave Cooper Kupp in and move this one to Deontay just for a little bit of differentiation here. At defense, I'm totally fine just putting in our Cincy defense for now. 3,400 just gives us a lot of flexibility there. If we're not going Debo, do we want to make a Kittle team, or you still kind of want to be in on the Mark Andrews stuff or pay down? It feels like one or the other for me.
Well, we took Davonte out, so we don't have to go to Andrews
True.
to be fun.
That's true.
If you want to do a Gesicki team, we could do that.
Mm-hmm.
We can see how that looks.
Let's do that, and then we'll throw Michael Carter in as our little placeholder for running back, and then that gives us 6,700 in the flex, kind of that range we've been living in the flex. We could hope that we get Gaskin back. We could, I don't know, man. It could be like an issue. Maybe we get Chase Edmonds, Chase Claypool. Like, it is an interesting range, I suppose. Like, we have a little bit more salary to work with, so we don't have to go down to like James Robinson. I don't know. This is a tough one. 6,700. What would you do in the flex?
Yeah, 6,700 is a real tricky spot here. It makes me want to dump Gesicki to Ertz and see if we can go up again.
Let's see what it gets us to if we move to Ertz.
Then you can play Chase.
Yeah, I like that a lot, significantly more. Do you think that it's too much to give up correlation-wise with having the Cincy defense there, or does it not really matter for a guy like Chase, you think?
I don't know. I mean, there are smarter men than me that look at like team defense correlation stuff, but like I don't think it really matters, right? Like it's because you're still just banking on like turnovers and it's like sacks and turnovers are really all we're looking at. And Denver's not going to score a bunch of points.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't hate it. You can also too, if you had this team, you can go back down and go up to like 49ers D or Texans D or whoever you like. You can mess around with that. So we're not locked in here. You can have some maneuverability.
Yeah, for the love of God, people, if you're watching this video later in the week, make sure you're up to date with news. This is a tougher day to do this. Reeves, I appreciate you, man. We flew through a couple of the most important games. We went through the locks of the week. Hope everything is good with Jake, and we'll see him next week. Make sure you guys follow Reeves on Twitter at Lord Reeves. Check out the worksheet over at sharpfootballanalysis.com, and best of luck, man. Keep on this heater you've been on, man. You've been on fire.
Yeah, we got to run into some magic again.
Love it, man. Talk to you later.
All right, guys.
Yeah. What's up, guys? We got a few minutes here before TJ is with us. Wanted to say hi. It's been a while. Obviously, being on the road last week was a little bit rough. Apologies to anyone who was upset that we didn't have the live stream on YouTube. We ended up just testing out a TikTok live stream, which I thought would be a little bit easier for you guys to get to. So sorry if there was some issues there on Sunday morning. We'll be here this week and going forward, probably not going to be doing too much traveling with everything that's going on. So I hope everyone is doing well. Wasn't a fantastic week for me by any means last week. So hopefully we can get through all of this chaos and build some lineups together on Sunday that will be pretty strong. So how we feeling, guys? I know it's been a little while. Again, was hoping to have a bunch of stuff go up on the second YouTube channel this week, but it got to the point where we kind of need to just let some stuff settle and shake out a little bit. So how we feeling? A bunch of people in the chat. Familiar faces, of course. Winterbell's in here. Jay Mitchell, Wayne Casey, Mikey Boy, Peter Unions, Justin's in here. Craig Lundar. What's up, guys? How we doing? Amanda's in here. How's it going, Amanda? Danny Chen, Cash Charles, CB, Ryan Woodridge has been very active in the chat. Appreciate you, my man. William McGuire. What's up, William? How's it going, guys? One of the things I wanted to mention before we get TJ back here is I finally found a different, I guess, option for doing the, not necessarily the giveaways, basically. We've been doing the wheel, right? But there's another thing that I found on Twitter that I thought was kind of interesting. There's a way, it's called Black Magic. It's a Twitter extension where you can basically, for any tweet, you can basically run a poll. I'll just show you guys. Might as well just show you. So what we have right here, this is going to be the pinned tweet right now to get into the Week 15 giveaway with all these items. So what I can do with this extension, see if I can get it to load up, is I can actually randomly pick retweets. And let's see, how do I do this? I'm still new to this thing. This specific tweet, I'm pretty sure if I click on this tweet, it does pop up. I'll have it all ironed out by Sunday, but basically we can do, I did make a GIF for this. It picks a random winner on the retweets and the likes. So it's a pretty cool little extension that you can use on Twitter. So what we're going to do basically is at the start of every week or sometime in the middle of the week after we do the unboxing, I'll tweet something out, and pretty simple to get in there. You got to subscribe to both YouTube channels, retweet the first tweet in the thread, and then I'll be able to pick randomly from Twitter directly. I think it's a little bit easier than doing the wheel and makes things a little bit more in real time and fun. Easier for me because then I don't have to juggle all of the names and stuff as well. So a bunch of awesome prizes that we're giving away: Justin Jefferson football, Najee Harris jersey, Jonathan Taylor jersey, the Wisconsin one, and then DeAndre Swift. I did have one of these up for Sunday. So I'm going to reach out to the people that did participate in the retweets and the likes for that one, just to make sure that they get in on this one. I thought it'd make sense to put all of these together since it's been a bit, I guess, not as many live things going on. So pretty cool. Curling is going great, Chris Unshaw says. What's up, man? The curling stuff. My billets in Canada love curling, man. I actually have like a pretty soft spot for curling as a whole. Pretty cool sport. I've never really, never tried it out seriously, but it does look like a lot of fun. The Swift jersey in the background, I'm not super happy with it. It's because it blends in with all the colors, right? I could change the colors and maybe it would pop a little bit. Oops, now we're flying around. Sometimes the remote doesn't want to work. Kind of like blends in with the color though. These running back committees this week is tough, Gibran. It's really tough. Joss, appreciate you, man. Thanks for saying that. There's Donta Foreman. Yeah, Justin, he's interesting. He's popping a little bit in the Sims. I just haven't gotten really comfortable with the running back position across the board yet. We'll go through Thursday Night Football after we get done with the GPP play video with TJ. We didn't have TJ last week, so I'm excited to chat with him. DJ, what's up, my man? If anyone is wondering, I know we got about 100 people in here hanging out. We do have this live ticker right now for the new channel. So if you haven't done that yet, it is pinned in the chat. It is in the description. Very easy. I'm going to continue to try and build this thing up. 1,000 people in that is the goal. We'll see if we can get there. I got to start making some. I think it'll be easier actually for this week in particular. Maybe I'll do a few more short form videos tomorrow and Saturday if we get some of this stuff to shake out a little bit. The plan was to do that yesterday. How was Tampa? Tampa was good. Tampa's stadium is actually amazing. I had a lot of fun. The atmosphere was great. It was a lot of Bills fans there as well. I did not like the last 2 touchdowns in that game, though. Gabe Davis and Perriman was not good for my game stacks. Family Man's in here. What's up, my man? How we doing? Thanks for dropping in, bro. Yeah, there is a lot of stuff going on. Like, as I was, like, in prep, like, normally I spend, like, my entire Thursday morning and Monday morning, like, preparing for the show and getting the guest stuff situated and all of that. This was one that it just feels like there's so much that we still don't know, right? So I hate doing content like that, which is why I was trying to at least be, like, when we were going through the locks, like, running backs we're not ready to throw out a lock running back yet. You know what I mean? Stuff needs to happen. But I'm going to go get TJ set, guys. We'll be back with the GPP video, and then we'll go right into the Thursday Night Football breakdown. We'll get you guys out of here. All right? Good talk. See ya. We are back. It's the Joe Holka Show presented by FanDuel. Week 15 top tournament plays of the week, position by position, guys that might go overlooked in GPPs but can help us get to the top of the DFS leaderboards. Anyone that is watching this, make sure you are paying very close attention to news this week. A lot of things can definitely change, especially when we're building a lineup at the end. We're going to do our best to use this information to build a GPP lineup live, but thankfully I am not alone. Welcoming back a good buddy of mine to the show. We missed him last week, director of DFS at 4for4 Football. You can find him on Twitter at TJ Hernandez. TJ, what's up, man?
Holka, what's up, buddy? Yeah, this week is absolutely bonkers. I mean, just from us talking this morning to recording right now, we've had multiple players out. So hopefully everything that we give today will still hold true Sunday. Tried to keep true to guys that look like they're in the clear, but who knows?
Who knows? Indeed. So anyone that is following along, definitely make sure you keep an eye on the news. We were just talking about how like it makes sense almost to like push things a full day back at times from a content perspective because so much stuff can change. So hopefully, again, we're talking about some guys that matter. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. TJ, the quarterback GPP play of the week, Aaron Rodgers, 7,600 on FanDuel at Baltimore. We talked about him briefly with Reeb, so make sure you guys check out that video when you're done with this one. But tell us why you're all over Rodgers this week.
Yeah, over the last month, Rodgers is the QB1 in terms of points per game. He's just been on fire lately since returning from that week out that he had. I mean, if we look at kind of the elite passers on the slate this week, we think we're probably, assuming Josh Allen plays, we're probably going to get a ton of ownership concentrated on Kyler and Josh Allen. I mean, the slate is crazy. You can pretty much do whatever you want this week. I mean, there's so many players out, so many cheap wide receiver values. Like there isn't pay up running backs. You can roster like three of the wide receiver studs. So people are going to be rolling out Kyler and Josh Allen with whatever combo they want. Obviously, because you can play those elite guys, Davonte Adams is going to be in that mix. But the thing that I like about Rodgers specifically, especially when you look at like the Rams and the Bills, comparing them, we have a lot of like really popular stacking options with Allen and Stafford specifically. Obviously, they're primary guys, Cup and Diggs, but then we're going to have really popular Van Jefferson and a really popular Gabriel Davis. I like the Packers because you can play Rodgers, stack with Devonta, who you're gonna get like a slight ownership and salary discount compared to Cooper Cup, but you're gonna get a huge ownership discount on the third option in MVS. He's just gonna be way less popular than Van Jefferson or Gabriel Davis. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is third in air yards per game over the last month, and one of the easiest ways to attack this Baltimore defense, who they're already like have injuries in their secondary, but just over the course of the entire season, 30th in QBR allowed on passes of 20 plus air yards, second most touchdowns allowed on those type of throws. So that fits into MVS's strengths as well. So I really like Aaron Rodgers with a double stack. Obviously, if you're playing him, you're playing Adams, but bringing MVS along as well.
Yeah, the MVS thing is one you definitely don't have to talk me into. One of my best weeks of the entire year was against kind of a similar defense. Like Minnesota gives up a lot to the boundary also, and we'll just see like any of these plays that are extended. Like Rodgers is looking to make big plays, and you'll see just even looking at ceiling this week, TJ, like the ownership looks relatively spread out, but one guy that looks to be like very under-owned does seem to be Rodgers in terms of that. 7,600 is just a really nice price tag for him. Let's move on to the running back GPP play of the week. Myles Gaskin, again, kind of like a little bit of a salary saver here, but running back is just a complete debacle right now. There's going to be a lot of stuff we're still waiting to shake out. But against the Jets, man, like if Gaskin is in, he's got to be one of the better point per dollar guys, I think.
Yeah, he's one of the could be one of the COVID casualties, but it came so early, and he is a fully vaxxed guy that I think he should be able to protocol his way to an active status. But what we do know on the Dolphins is Jalen Waddle is out. One of the passing games that is going to be popular, one of the guys that might be even more popular than Rodgers, who we talked about, is Tua. And then we're probably just going to get a very chalk Devonte Parker for the simple fact that we know Waddle is out. On top of that, because running back is so scarce this week, we're going to have ownership really concentrate on a couple guys. Like it's probably just going to be Sony Michelle, James Robinson, and then like default maybe Zeke and a
Right.
couple other guys. I don't know. It's just really bad. But I think even if we do get a healthy tag on Gaskin, which could go up to the last minute or maybe Saturday night, depending on how the protocols work, he could fall through the cracks a little bit. At least get him at a sub 15%. You're getting him as like a perfect price pivot off of James Robinson and Sony Michel, who I do think will be the most popular running backs on the slate. And Gaskin has as much upside as anybody against this Jets defense that they teams have ran at the fifth highest rate against the Jets over the last 6 weeks. You can attack them pretty much any which way, and Miami is almost a double-digit favorite, favored by 9.5. But people are just going to move ownership towards that passing game. So I like him as a price pivot. I like him as a leverage play off of a chalk Davonte Parker, and he's one of 6 backs with 15 plus touches in every game over the last 6 weeks. So we know the floor is there, but with a possible big lead and as much as teams run against the Jets, ceiling game in the range of outcomes, assuming Gaskin can get that active tag for us.
Yeah, we're always looking for these guys that check both of those boxes, right? Price pivot and leverage. So definitely am on board with the Myles Gaskin play. I'm sure a lot of you guys saw my pinned tweet already, but we're going to be giving away 4 amazing items this week from Pristine Auction: a signed jersey from Najee Harris, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, also a Justin Jefferson football. Pretty simple to enter that giveaway. All the details can be found on my Twitter at Joe Holka. TJ, the GPP wide receiver play of the week, Marvin Jones, going to give us a little bit of a salary saving option, 5,700 on FanDuel against Houston. No Urban Meyer, so I would imagine this team's going to be playing a little bit looser than normal, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a coincidence or not, whether it's Urban Meyer factor or the Texans factor, but Jacksonville is favored for the first time since week 1 when they played the Texans the first time. And I was going to when values first came out this week, Robinson was popping as a value even before the Urban Meyer news, and I was going to be very resistant to that until I started kind of going through this slate, seeing that they were favored, and then once Urban Meyer gets fired and seeing how thin the running back pool is, Robinson's probably just going to be the mega chalk, right? But I mean, this really is a team that whether it's Urban Meyer or not, they haven't shown a ability to put up a lot of points. And I think the big narrative here is that now that Urban Meyer is gone, that Robinson is going to be the player that really eats. Another thing that's going to happen is Darrell Bevell, even though he's been the offensive coordinator, now he's going to have full control as interim head coach. He's been one of the most, in terms of deep ball rate, one of the highest rates among play callers when he has been the active play caller, dating all the way back to he was the guy that unlocked Matthew Stafford when that season Stafford only played 8 games, and a sane efficiency because Bevel really had him dialing up the deep ball. That also goes back to his days with Russell Wilson. If that happens this week and they do let Trevor Lawrence throw a little bit, the guy that is going to benefit from that is Marvin Jones. The Texans allow the second highest completion percentage on deep balls this year. They allow the most yards per attempt on deep balls this year. And I mean, all of a sudden, like, not even just James Robinson, people are all of a sudden making Laquan Treadwell a thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
he got a little bit of volume, and I'm like, I'm just not going to play even if it's a 7% Laquan Treadwell, 10%. Like I'm just not doing that.
Yeah.
Give me a 5% Marvin Jones. I don't know if I would pivot to the whole passing offense because we just haven't seen Trevor Lawrence look good, and I don't know if everything is just cured overnight with Urban Meyer gone. But Marvin Jones could get loose. You don't need the whole offense to go crazy for your wide receiver to get loose on FanDuel when you're just chasing touchdowns. He gets behind the defense or 1 or 2 touchdowns, and you're dancing.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting price range at wide receiver because maybe we see a couple of these guys get steamed up. We have Devonte Parker at 5,800, probably is going to be the chalky option in this range. So again, another guy where it's a price pivot off of a chalk Devonte Parker, but it's also a leverage play off of all the Robinson chalk. So I like both of those plays that we talked about at running back and wide receiver. Let's move over to the tight end position. I think that some people are going to think that Dawson Knox is a little bit too expensive, TJ. He's 6,500 on FanDuel versus Carolina. And it's just easier at that point of the salary spectrum just to move up to Mark Andrews, George Kittle, or move down to a couple guys. I think Zach Ertz at 5,300 is somewhat interesting, or maybe Gesicki in that same range. I think Gesicki is really the pivot though, right? Versus Knox. Knox is going to be much lower owned though than Gesicki, I would imagine.
Yeah, I think Gesicki probably gets he probably gets popular by Sunday with Waddle being out, and again I think people will play Tua, so there will just naturally be a trickle down effect to his primary two pass catchers, obviously Parker and then Gesicki, but Knox is just set up. He's set up beautifully because as long as Josh Allen is active, he's going to be top two most popular quarterbacks. That'll automatically bring Diggs along, even though Diggs probably won't reach the Devonte Adams and Cooper Cup levels. Probably still will be popular because it's easy to fit him in. And then everybody's going to throw Gabe Davis in there, assuming Emmanuel Sanders doesn't play because Gabe Davis he's the chalky cheap guy, affordable, and we just have a super easy leverage play pivot to Dawson Knox, who has 6+ targets in 3 of his last 4 games. He's tied for 4th most red zone targets among tight ends since returning from injury. We saw him get there last week when Josh Allen goes bonkers. So on FanDuel, where again we're chasing touchdowns at a tight end position that, like, outside of Kittle, it's pretty weak, especially if Mark Andrews is catching passes from Huntley instead of Lamar Jackson. I mean, even though Dawson Knox salary is up there, as I mentioned, you can do whatever you want this week. There's so much available. Like, we're not paying for a $9,000 running back. Sure, you're gonna pay up for Cup or Devontae or something, but there just isn't a lot of spots to spend salary at this week. So even though he is expensive in an absolute sense, in terms of fitting him into a lineup, I don't think it should be that difficult this week.
Yeah, in terms of doing whatever you want, one thing I would ask of you is that you subscribe to the second YouTube channel. There's a link in the description for that. We have a live ticker on the show right now. 620 people have already done that for us. And the other thing that you can do, since you can basically do whatever you want on this slate, is pay up a little bit at defense. So the Green Bay Packers are 4,500 on FanDuel as 5.5-point road favorites in this one at Baltimore. So even if Rodgers ends up being a decent leverage option in GPPs, I think that the Packers defense is definitely in play. What do you think about this part of it, TJ?
Yeah, and this is just a simple fact of looking at all of the favorites, looking at how things are likely going to play out, and if people are going to pay up for a defense 4,500 or more, there's just a lot of defenses that are huge favorites. Now, Packers are favored by 5.5, but we have a lot of 8, 9, 10 point favorites this week, and I think people are going to go to those spots. And the thing about playing against Baltimore is you're either going to get a very limited Lamar or a Huntley, who we really haven't seen him have to play a full game against a really good defense. Baltimore is bottom 3 in adjusted sack rate allowed, and one reason that Baltimore has really struggled is when they have faced heavy pressure, especially Lamar Jackson. Now, Packers haven't sent heavy pressure a ton, but over the last 6 weeks, when they do send 5 or more rushers, they have the 4th highest pressure rate in the league, and that's really how you attack Baltimore. So they've shown that they can do that, and if they could ramp that up, regardless of who's starting at quarterback, you're going to get the Packers as decent favorites against a struggling offense, probably at, like, I don't know, maybe 5%, maybe even lower ownership, just because we have so many of those big point spreads this week.
All right, we've heard from TJ. I want you guys to pause this video. Let me know in the comments your favorite Week 15 tournament play. TJ, you ready to build a FanDuel team, my man?
Yeah, man, let's do it and hope
Let's
that
do it.
the players we put in are still ticking by Sunday morning.
Yes, anyone watching this video, this lineup was built early in the week. There's definitely some things that I would move around as you're approaching lock on Sunday. This team will be in the listener league at fanduel.com/Holka, so make sure you guys get in there before it fills. $5 rake free, big prizes. You guys know the drill at this point. TJ, what do you want to start with? You want to go with the Rodgers stack?
Yeah, let's go with that Rodgers double. I mean, the MVS salary and ownership is basically going to let you do what you want. He's going to be so low owned that you could pretty much eat the chalk anywhere else. Rodgers is probably going to be sub 10%. Like, the Bills ownership, like, it might get really out of hand just
Mm-hmm.
because, like, we just know who to play with Josh Allen. Whereas Kyler, like, if you're playing Kyler, even though DeAndre Hopkins is out and you have some value plays on it, like, people, I guess, might play Ertz with him, but Connor not there. It's going to be weird trying to figure out where, like, who's playing. Like, there might be a lot of naked Kyler
Could
lineups
be.
this week, but I just like the idea of starting with this Packers offense because, as we said up top, like, Rodgers is scoring so many points, they can easily keep up with the Cardinals and the Bills and the Rams.
I think one thing I want to do with this, because if there is going to be some Rodgers stacks out there, I think a lot of people are probably going to try and bring it back with Mark Andrews. So maybe we do put Knox on this team just as a little bit of
Yeah.
a price pivot. You good with that?
Yeah, I like that a lot. I don't like bringing back in this spot. Like, bringbacks are fine, obviously, and Andrews is the obvious one, but I mean, again, we're either looking at Huntley, where who knows what we'll get out of the passing game, or Lamar. And even if Lamar's active on it's the ankle, right?
Mhm.
Who knows how that plays out.
Defense wise, I think that all the way down there, Cincinnati is going to grab a little bit of attention at Denver. We could go the Jacksonville route, kind of playing towards if Robinson doesn't get there, maybe we get a couple defensive touchdowns, something like that. Is there a cheaper one that you are on down there though that's a little different?
So I was thinking about it differently. Even though I said I like Marvin Jones as a pivot, if we're gonna
Mhm.
play MVS and Dawson Knox and Aaron Rodgers, like we already are pretty contrarian.
Mhm.
So I think we can lean into the Robinson shock
Okay.
and like pair them with Jacksonville just to get that correlation.
Man, I mean, 6,300, it's just such a great price point for him. And this
Yeah.
is the type of lineup that you would put Robinson in, right? Like a stack that is going to be a little bit differentiated. So
Yeah.
no issues with
And
that. Go
I
ahead.
don't think anyone's gonna play Jacksonville with him, even though like it's
Agreed.
kind of an obvious spot because they are favorites, and Texans against Davis Mills is just like, any defense favorite against Mills is a good spot. I just think people are gonna play Robinson and not really think about playing Jacksonville because you could play so many of these big favorites.
Yeah, totally agree with that. 7,300 the rest of the way. So we do have some firepower here. We could play Cooper Kupp on this team, and number one in the Sims so far early in the week. Obviously, with Tyler Lockett out, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want to go into that Metcalf price tag of 6,800. With Cooper Kupp, I think that's going to be a pretty popular mini stack. But you have any ideas for the rest of this?
Um, so so one thing that I'm like kind of trying to think through this week, especially on FanDuel, it's tough. Like there's so few running backs that usually on FanDuel we see kind of like an even split of running back and wide receiver flex. I wonder if it's just going to be like a crazy overwhelming number of people playing wide receiver in the flex just because running
Possible.
back is so thin. So like I don't know if like just an easy way to get contrarian is flexing a running back, but also it kind of feels like you're forcing it, right? So
Hmm.
so I'm not sure what I want to do there. I think the way to attack a slate like this when like everything is just really like it's really thin across the
Yep.
board, right? I think we want to just lean into some strong narratives, hope that like our passing games that we target hit, our running games that we target hit. So instead of like trying to hit on Cooper Cup and DK, I'm almost tempted to like hope that Cup doesn't hit if I'm already playing Adams and Scantling and Dawson Knox. Like, why not play Diggs with Knox? Hope they go
Okay.
nuclear, and then like see what happens if you put Sony Michelle and like if he gets the touchdown variance. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's an. I'll try that for sure and see where we're at. Another idea as we're talking that I'd at least kind of thought about is maybe you just go with a Donta Foreman and Deontay Johnson mini stack. But I'm just trying to think. Running back is so tough, man. But then at that point, we'd be
Yeah.
probably throwing a wide receiver in the flex. But let's try the Diggs thing first. So 7,100, we'll put in Sony. Obviously, keep an eye on what happens with Henderson. What's your take on the Henderson stuff if he plays, right? Do you think there's a chance that this ends up being kind of like split down the middle, or do you think that he comes in and takes his full workload?
I I
It's
think
tough.
it's probably a Javante Melvin situation at this point because Sony's been decent enough. I mean, Seattle is a run funnel defense, but I mean the Rams with Cup and Stafford, like I don't think they're just all of a sudden going to try to jam it down their throat. So if we do get a Daryl Henderson active, it's probably an avoid for me. Like I don't know if there's enough where they each get 2 touchdowns or something like that. I guess in really large field stuff, you can flip a coin, and I'd probably lean Sony just because it seems like the coaching staff has been talking him up more than they ever have Daryl Henderson. But if he's active, I'm probably just avoiding it.
Yeah, I'm with you. 7,400 is a weird range if we want to try and play running back, unless you're bullish on Saquon Barkley. I'm a little bit spooked by the ankle thing with
Yeah.
him. So we could go a wide receiver. We could go CD Lamb. We could go Deontay Johnson. We could kind of flip a coin with one of these Denver guys. Antonio Gibson at 6,900 is nice. We could just move up at one of the defense
Are-
positions, something like that. But any preference on this last slot?
What are we trying to fill? We have just our
Flex is left,
print.
7,400. Yeah.
How much is CD?
We can fit CD. He's 7,300 or
Yeah,
7,400. Sorry.
I mean if Zeke is like accidentally popular just because there's no other running backs,
Hmm.
like CD is he's kind of a great play, I think.
Boom. I like it. I like it. There it is. Follow TJ on Twitter at TJ Hernandez. Obviously, all the great work over at 4for4 Football, including the DFS MVP podcast with friend of the show, Matt Harmon. TJ, let's hope that this isn't completely irrelevant in about 5 minutes, or else we're not going to be able to post this. But I'm hoping for the best one, man. I think we had some good stuff this week.
Yeah, good luck, everybody. Home stretch. So, let's kill it over this last month of the regular season.
Let's do it, man. We'll see you next week.
Later.
All right, guys, crazy day. We have one more segment to go through. We're going to go through Thursday Night Football here shortly, but I know we had a bunch of other people come in during the middle of the segment with TJ, so I wanted to just quickly show you guys how we're going to be doing the Pristine auction drawings going forward. What you need to do is go over to my Twitter, at Joe Holk. That's the pinned tweet. You can see it right at the top, Week 15 Pristine auction giveaway. We're giving away a Justin Jefferson football. It's this one right here. And Najee Harris jersey, Jonathan Taylor jersey, DeAndre Swift jersey, bunch of awesome items this week. All you have to do is go to this tweet, scroll down on the thread. You'll see how to enter. It should take you less than 15 seconds to enter this thing. Like, retweet, all that stuff. But what's cool is I found this little extension on Twitter to where you can pick a random winner from a retweet or a like, whatever it may be. So this top tweet, this is the one that you need to like and retweet to get entered into the drawing, and make sure you're covering these other bases on this one as well. To get in, we're going to be doing the drawing live on stream Sunday morning. Excited for a Sunday morning stream. Obviously, last week I was on the road, so happy to be back. Swaggy in the chat. Zeke is dust. Yeah, the Zeke stuff is completely out of control. We'll see where that ownership ends up standing by the end of the week. Really, really tough week. So let's go ahead and move over to Thursday Night Football, guys. It is the breakdown / sim results. We're going to go through everything. But before we go into the DFS side of things, let's touch quickly on what stands out on the betting side. KC at LA Chargers. Chiefs are currently 3-point road favorites in this one, but the Sharps appear to be on the home team. 65% of the bets, despite an overwhelming amount of betting tickets still on KC in this one. The over-under 53. So pretty nice for a Thursday night football game. Normally we get some kind of slogging games. It does look like not a ton of sharp action on either side. Well, who could blame them though, right? This Chiefs defense has been playing extremely well, and kind of a tough spot to gauge with how strong these offenses are as a whole. So we're going to go over to the Sims, see what the Sims have to say. runthesims.com/Holka if you want to get access to these. I think it's especially valuable on these single game slates to go through and check from an ownership perspective, all of that stuff. So let's move over and we'll start there. And at first glance here, I would imagine it's going to be a lot of quarterbacks, which is pretty normal on FanDuel for sure, just because there's no difference. You don't have to get that extra multiplier on salary. So a lot of times you'll see the top scoring player be in the winning lineup, even in some of these larger field contests. But Justin Herbert does seem to be, actually, it does look like very slightly Patrick Mahomes is in a few more of the MVP slots on this one, but pretty stagnant the rest of the way. Obviously, you're going to see guys like Tyreek Hill and Keenan Allen up here, but you can see it's just so significantly in favor of a Justin Herbert or Patrick Mahomes MVP slot. What's really nice about Run the Sims added another metric on here, so we actually have like a leverage score in here, right? So we can see the MVP leverage. We're getting a lot of leverage here with Justin Herbert because the ownership looks like it is going to be about 21% in the MVP slot, yet he's popping at about 33% of the optimal rate. So what the optimal rate is if we were to simulate this slate 10,000 times, that's the rate that player pops into the lineup. as the MVP. That's the percentage. So 33% of the time, it's a Justin Herbert captain. It's not really shaking out that way ownership-wise. Some other guys, I mean, this is kind of what we've been doing, trying to find these guys that are over-owned, under-owned. It does look like on the surface, someone like Austin Eckler might be a little bit over-owned in the MVP slot. Some injury concerns there. We'll see how much Austin Eckler ends up playing, but we'll get into that. One of the guys that I think that if it's going to be Mahomes or Herbert, let's talk about Keenan Allen and Tyreek Hill for a second. Like Tyreek Hill, definitely still the alpha in this offense with like, I guess the how poorly Kelsey has played at times this year. I mean, the target shares there over 26%, the air yard share pretty close to 40%. We just haven't really seen the floor as much this year. We've seen him hit his floor more often, so that's a little bit, it makes me a little bit nervous at that price point for him, $13K for Tyreek Hill. Keenan Allen, I think that, like, off the top, like, I wish I could be a little bit more bullish on Austin Eckler. I'm just a little bit nervous with that one now. So I think that if I was to just, like, pick one guy not named Justin Herbert on the Chargers side of things that I would even consider in the MVP slot, it would probably be Keenan Allen, and we'll just hope that the touchdowns run our way. In terms of Herbert versus Mahomes, I do think that this game, if it ends up being kind of a shootout, I think that pretty clearly Mahomes has the ceiling to get us there. If it ends up being a little bit less of a shootout, I think Herbert makes a little bit more sense just because you can get a nice little ownership discount on him. Both those guys are great plays. I'm a little bit nervous about the offensive line for Justin Herbert, just with how well this Chiefs defense has been playing lately. So that would be one of my bigger concerns there. As we kind of move down a little bit, Darrell Williams, kind of right at ownership though. I think he's kind of interesting just with how much of the work that he's been taking over in this backfield. And I think a lot of people are going to want to go back to CEH, but I have some interest in the price point for Darrell Williams at $9,500, saving that $1,500 in salary versus CEH is kind of interesting. If you aren't interested in Darrell Williams, you could just pay all the way down for someone like Byron Pringle. And he does seem to be one of those guys. 30% of the optimal flex teams do have Byron Pringle at 6,500, guys. He's pretty clearly the best value option on the slate, but he's also going to be extremely, extremely popular. CEH at that price point feels kind of like you can't really call him a leverage option with like where he's going to be owned. He's still going to be extremely popular. It's a weird price for him. Like that's my initial thoughts, is that it's a little bit too expensive for a somewhat split backfield. I think you want to play CEH in these games where you think that KC is just going to absolutely run away with it, not necessarily in a game that's going to be a little bit back and forth like this one. Mike Williams is intriguing. I think that I was hoping that he would come in a little bit lower. There's not a ton of leverage here overall. I'm not playing Mike Williams in the captain slot or in the MVP slot. I think that if you were going to go completely stars and scrubs, like those are the type of teams that will have Big Mike in there. I'm a little bit nervous about his usage. Obviously, he had a really nice game against KC earlier this year, but that's kind of when his usage was significantly different. So in terms of guys that look to be a little bit under-owned, I would say that Darrell Williams is one of the ones that stands out right away. He's got a 12.4% leverage score, which we really like. CEH, I think both of those running backs, you can make an argument for them being leverage options. But what's interesting, I think like Keenan Allen had 44% of the flex options, yet he's only owned in about 38%. That's a decent opportunity there. The kickers are almost always going to be negative leverage, no matter what you do. I don't have a ton of interest in, I think that with Pringle on the slate and how much more usage he's gotten recently and the price point, I don't really see a reason to go all the way down to some of these Jalen Guyton type of players. But you could. Jared Cook, 7,500. He'd probably be the one that I'd rather go to if I'm not going to Pringle. Family Man in the chat says 102 people watching, only 52 likes. We're a little bit a little light on the likes this week, but that's okay. It's okay. Let's go ahead and switch a few of these inputs. I'm always curious. So this is supposed to be a very high scoring game, right? But what if it ends up being much lower scoring? What if it ends up being like 10 to 14, like very like crazy outcome under? I'm always curious, like what happens to the Sims at that point. So say that we have a slight victory for KC here, but it ends up being extremely low scoring. Wow, we end up seeing a lot more MVP rate go to the wide receivers at that point. So Tyreek Hill, Keenan Allen in that scenario end up being much more palatable MVPs. So if you think that this game could go a little bit, I guess, less scoring than projected, maybe Keenan Allen or Tyreek Hill makes some sense at MVP. Let's go ahead and, since KC has been playing so well, let's play a blowout scenario here. Let's say this game ends up being like 27-10. Like literally, like let's be real, like this Chiefs defense hasn't been giving up points. So let's see what that does to the Sims. I would imagine Mahomes just skyrockets. Mahomes in this scenario, 40% of the MVPs. And outside of that, it's basically flat. Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill, Justin Herbert, like no one cracks like 16% or so. So if you think that KC is going to win and win big, I think that Patrick Mahomes pretty easy MVP play. What else stands out in that scenario? Yeah, I guess these alpha wide receivers, it does seem to be kind of the correct path in a lot of different game scenarios. We see Austin Eckler at this ownership, 41%. Makes me a little bit nervous. And the leverage is not great. Sky high price tag. That's like one of the ones that I think would be harder for me to get to overall. I can't like it twice. Can't confirm you cannot like videos twice. Dave, I appreciate you, my man. Guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Got my booster yesterday, feeling a little bit, not necessarily sick, just a little bit different than normal. I'm going to go relax for a little bit before I jump into some editing and enjoy this game. So I hope everyone is doing well. We'll see you guys on Sunday morning, normal time, 9 a.m. Eastern time. And it's good to be back, guys. Appreciate y'all.